Welcome to week 3 of BU 301. This week we will be discussing steps to implement your project and coordinate grant management tasks. Readings for this week include Chapter 4 of our course text and an article posted in Moodle. Assignments include a discussion forum, quiz, and assignment number 3, where you will set up a task calendar. Taking the extra time at the beginning of your project to organize yourself and put in place resources to help manage a grant award will help make the overall management of the grant project much smoother. So let's say you received a notice of a grant award, reviewed the full grant agreement, agreed to all the terms and conditions, and the agreement was signed by the authorized signer for your organization. So now what? Now is the time to implement your project. Some of the initial tasks will have been included in your grant proposal, but there are also a few standard practices you can set up that will help with the overall implementation and management of your award. Of course, as with all grant projects, every single one is unique and will require a tailored setup. But as a starting point, the following tasks are the ones to consider to get you started on the right path to effective grant management. Depending on the type and the scope of your project, it may be beneficial to schedule a planning meeting with staff and partners involved in the implementation of your project. Depending on how your organization is structured, you may need to work with other internal offices or departments to implement tasks and manage information. For example, let's say that Bay Mills Community College recently received a grant award from the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, to develop local farm-to-school food systems. As a principal investigator, often referred to as PI for short, or as the project director, who would you need to meet and coordinate with first? Who would have been part of your original project proposal? Most likely in this instance, the Waishkee Bay Farm staff and local school districts. It would be the responsibility of the project lead to make sure these project partners were made aware of the recent award, to know the project timeline, and to understand what is expected of them as part of the overall project. Coordinating this information for partners is very important to do as early as possible so everyone knows what they're supposed to do. It's also helpful to sit down with your partners or collaborators to talk about upcoming work and pending deliverables. In this example, the project director may want to coordinate a joint meeting with the farm director and the school district superintendent or principal to discuss individual project tasks, collaborate efforts, and ongoing communication practices. The original grant proposal may have included the development of an advisory council or committee. An advisory committee is a group of people with experience or expertise in the field of your project that will help to advise, brainstorm ideas, and guide connections to support the project. If the proposed planned for such a committee, project leads should also convene this group as soon as possible at the start of the implementation to establish a meeting schedule and to start to gather the input and expertise from the advisory council. Coordinating the schedules of multiple professionals can be challenging. Planning meeting schedules in advance is a way to recognize and respect the time commitments of your group. Establishing a schedule such as a monthly meeting on the same date and time gives your collaborators the option to schedule other obligations around your meeting. For the Farm to School project, the program director may want to establish a monthly meeting every third Tuesday at 3 p.m. This allows collaborators to block their calendars during this time slot. Grant management will also require clear communication and coordination with an organization's business or finance office. Every entity is structured a bit different here, but in most cases, the program director will work with other individuals in the finance office to track grant expenditures and prepare financial reports. There is a whole module later in this course dedicated to working with your finance office, but it's important to note the importance of initial communication with the finance office here. In many cases, a new grant finance code will need to be established during the initial implementation phase. Communicate early with your finance office about the steps for this process. You may also want to establish a set meeting schedule with this department to review expenditures and the budget as the project progresses. In addition to initial communication, you will need to create a grant file to keep and organize all project information. Your organization may have a standard practice for grant files, or you may need to create the system if grant-funded projects are new. In either case, it's important to use a set structure to maintain consistency and to ensure all relevant documents are in a space that can be accessed in the future. This could be a system that is already in place or one that you set up. The options to structure your grant files are endless. You could arrange grant files by year received in chronological order, alphabetically by organization name, or by the grant award number. Follow the established structure or try to imagine what would be the most intuitive setup internally at your organization. For example, you could use a system that files by the funding organization's name and then by the year the award was received. You could also start the file by the year and then the funding agency. There's not a right or wrong way to structure a grant file, but the structure should work for your organization. Take the time to learn your organization's system or to create a comprehensive one with input from your finance office and others that should be involved. Many funders, especially federal agencies, require grantees to maintain grant records for a certain period of time. IRS guidelines require files to be retained for 3 to 7 years, depending on the type of information on record. Your grant files will store this information. Grant files can be managed in an electronic system, in hard files, or a combination of both. This structure is for the most part at the discretion of the awardee, as long as the necessary information is accessible to parties as needed. As I just stated, the grant file structures will vary across organizations, but the following are examples of standard documents and subfolders you will want in a full grant file. The fully executed agreement, or the agreement that is signed by both parties, will be the section of the grant file that project staff will reference frequently. This is the document that outlines the details of the project. A copy of any agreement modification, such as a time extension or supplemental funding, should be kept on file as well here. We will talk more about modifications and amendments later in this course. The approved budget should be on file as well as any budget adjustments that are made to the original budget along the way. We will again talk more about grant budgets. All assurances and certifications should be accessible in the grant file. These are often a part of the grant agreement, but they can also be outlined as a separate document. The original proposal documents. This includes the original proposal and any additional plans or supplement material that was submitted. Any adjustments to the scope of work or project plan should also be kept on file here. Reports, including all narrative and financial reports throughout the entire project period. The grant file should also include all closeout reports. Project correspondence relevant to the complete grant record. This does not need to include every email associated with the project, but key correspondence with the funder and project partners is important to save in the grant file for easy reference and historical documentation. Creating a grant project calendar at the first implementation of your project is a useful way to keep the project team on task, track progress, decrease duplicate work, and ensure your project is meeting project deliverable dates such as project reporting. The grant project or task calendar can be set up in many formats. Some organizations use software designed for grant management tasks, while others set up a system using Excel and the task function through their email system. Microsoft Teams can be used to set up tasks for a group. Again, there is no right or wrong way to set this up. Your organization and the type of project will heavily impact the structure that works best. If your proposal included a summary of tasks and/or a project timeline, this will be the basis for the creation of a task calendar. In general, your calendar should include internal task timelines such as hiring new staff or hosting a series of community events, and any recurring dates associated with the grant process, such as report deliverables, advisory committee meetings, and annual objectives. To be a useful tool, and not just busy work, try to use a system that includes communication functionality within the system to connect the tasks and goals to your project. This will be helpful when you start to prepare progress reports. Many grant-funded projects will include funds to hire new staff members, bring in consultants, or collaborate with other organizations as subawardees or subrecipients. If the approved budget includes such support, hiring project staff is another one of the initial project tasks that's important to initiate as soon as your agreement is signed. You will often need the proposed positions to carry out the full scope of your project. Hiring staff can take weeks to months to complete, so start this process right away. You will most likely need to coordinate with your human resources department to carry out these tasks, including developing a position description, posting the position, interviewing, and going through the formal hiring process. Consultants are individuals or a group that you will bring in to a project to provide some type of service or support. This could be a motivational speaker, an evaluator, or a firm to complete a needs assessment. Whatever the case, make sure you know where consultants fit into your project timeline so you can start the steps to complete this task on a timely basis. For projects with subawards, these agreements are usually implemented with the initial tasks. If a project provides a subaward to another entity as part of the overall project, a separate agreement is put in place between the awardee and the subawardee. For example, continuing to use the farm to school example, BMCC may subaward part of the total award amount to another entity that is significantly contributing to the scope of the project, such as a subaward to the Bay Mills Ojibwe Charter School to construct a greenhouse on their campus to grow certain crops with the assistance of the Wishkey Bay Farm. We'll talk more about subawards in a few weeks. As I mentioned earlier, many organizations use grant management software to help implement and track project tasks. As with all software, the range of support varies, the cost fluctuates, and systems are constantly changing. There are many great software options that can help support the grant management of your project. The slide here includes just a small snapshot of software in use today. Many of the available software options include systems that help automate management processes from the approval of expenditures to the submission of reports. Make sure you have a clear understanding of what is already in use at your organization, or if possible, do some exploration into new software that could be purchased and implemented as another grant management tool.